Hello and welcome to ExpoTalks episode 9. My name is Matt, and today with me, my colleague Irina. Irina, how are you doing?
I'm good, thank you so much.
And our guest today, Adam Perry, co-founder of Event Industry News, right? Organizer of many of industry events, and the main event is the Event Tech Live held in London. So welcome and thank you very much for joining us.
Oh, thanks you to having me on, Matt. And I mean, it's a pleasure to be here and looking forward to a good conversation.
I'd like to start with a question regarding the content creation. So, in the events industry, there's so much happening, and you know, it might create some challenges for creating a content. But at the same time, it's easier because you have many things happening at the same time. So, what helps you in selecting the topics for the event industry news and creating such a content for the education program for the ETL?
Yeah, sure. So I guess with both of them, both the publication, news, content features that we produce on that publication and the event itself, we're very lucky in the sense that we have access to a lot of data and we can see trends. Trends move along with time. At certain times, people want to see different information. The publication, for example, the trends seem to be things around global politics, or UK politics, for example, what's happening and affecting things like budget. So we tend to write a little bit more about that when those things are happening. At certain times of year as well, there is more focused. At the beginning of the year, people want to kind of think about things like new opportunities, new horizons, innovations, the way that people are going to be approaching their business in that following year. At the back end of the year, we tend to focus more on kind of like recaps of what happened in the year, how the industry evolved, that kind of stuff. But the publication really revolves around news at pace. So we tend to kind of look and keep our ears to the ground with other industry professionals and the network that we've got, what's happening in the market, what are the big news stories coming. And then throughout the rest of the year to supplement that, we ourselves do exactly this, go out and interview who we think are thought leaders in their respective field and try and take their brain and put that into some form of content, whether that be a written piece, a podcast, a webinar, or something like that. The event itself, an Event Tech Live, is very much more driven by actually what's happening in the market from a technology perspective, I believe, more globally. At the moment, as we can all imagine, there's a huge amount of interest around artificial intelligence and what that might be able to do for us as a sector. Does it create problems that we need to be aware of? Data compliance, hallucinations, all of those kinds of things. And I think Event Tech Live is also kind of really reaching people from a content perspective at different levels of their journey. We still have lots of professionals that are only now just getting started with technology. They're only just starting to use things like floor plans, things like event apps and stuff like that. Others are kind of more established. They have their tech stack and they're looking to add other additional things into it to kind of round that out and tweak it and make it a little bit more robust. And then you have others that are very much at the pinnacle of what I call event tech. They've used technology for multiple years. They're deploying it across hundreds, if not thousands, of events globally. They're really harnessing that technology. And actually, all of their interest is around data. It all comes back to data. What can we do with the data? How can we leverage it? How can we interpret it? And things like that. So we have got Event Tech Live this year. We've got lots of topics and conversation around AI, as you can probably imagine. But the beauty about it is we still go really granular and deep into those other subjects. And part of that, even now, we're still kind of finalizing some of the agenda because we leave some of it open just to see what's coming through on registration so we can align some of those topics with what people are literally coming to the show to explore.
Will AI take our jobs?
No, I think there's a really good saying. I can't remember who kind of said this first, but the technology won't replace the jobs the same way as CDs didn't replace rock concerts, right?
That's
like they
right.
still exist. But I do believe, like in any profession, the more knowledgeable you are, the better you can use these tools, the more skilled you are as an individual, the more valuable you are as a business. I myself don't want to go out and learn AI for every different aspects of our business. It's just unreasonable to even consider that. But do I want somebody to be in my business and work in my business that is an expert in AI when it comes to marketing? Of course. Do I want that same person when it comes to sales, when it comes to operations, when it comes to finance? Absolutely. And I think this is what I say to so many people the same about event technology, right? Understanding event technology and knowing how to use event technology to their maximum capacity is a very, very valuable skill set. I think it's a hugely undervalued skill set at the moment in our industry. And I believe going forward, we will see people who are listing companies. I am skilled in platform X. I am skilled in platform Y. I know how to use, kind of like you see people say, like you used to see people saying, I know how to use Excel, right? Like
Yeah.
we will see that. And that's an indicator of like, yeah, but back to your original point. No, AI is not taking our jobs.
Uh-huh.
Not for a second. I wish it would, then maybe I could retire,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, an earlier retire program, that would be nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would like to go deeper into the topic about social media and especially LinkedIn. So, what advice would you give to a company who has just begun to gain its audience? How to gain attention when so many things are happening in the
Okay.
event industry?
Yeah. So I think there's a couple of different thoughts and feelings around here. My honest opinion is forget about the company page, right? No, nobody really cares what's coming out from a company page. Yes, we might follow it. Probably more of your competitors follow it than anybody else, right? So I don't think doing a lot of building of a company page. Ours has grown quite organically because we publish a lot of industry news there, so it's become a news feed. But I really think anybody who's looking to get started on LinkedIn and build their following there really needs to give their team the freedom to be creators and connect because people want authenticity, right? Whether that's learning from you as a company in terms of how you're approaching your business, how you're approaching your sales, the value that you can bring as a business to buyers and things like that. But that happens on a personal level. So I think first and foremost is think about your strategy of how can each member of your team have input into that value? How can they be part of that content creation and that social media strategy? Where they're comfortable, obviously. Like we don't want to force anybody onto LinkedIn if they don't want to be there. And at the moment, I would say go all in on video, like all in on video, long form content on LinkedIn, articles, building groups. I think they're dying, if I'm honest, on LinkedIn. But LinkedIn have now kind of following TikTok in the sense of like they're really, really pushing heavily that short form video format. I think there's so much value there to be generated. I think it's right at the start of it. I don't think anybody's hardly leveraging it. Certainly, some people are putting content up there. Even we're only just getting started with it ourselves. But I think if there's any business out there and really wants to gain momentum on LinkedIn, if you can find something to talk about on a daily basis on LinkedIn, I think you'll fly. So that's my advice. Go all in on video. Think of 30 topics through the month. Divide them between the team. Everybody do a short video or collaborate on short videos. Put that content up there. Put it from the team, and I think you'll see your numbers skyrocket. And actually, if you've got an extremely well curated newsletter that's consistent, and the key message there is consistent, unbiased, and not based around marketing the business, they can become really successful as well. So, that needs to be how can we create a weekly or bi-weekly newsletter that pulls together really important information for my customers that isn't about me or the business, but is there to help support around the industry. That can be really powerful. If you can build a really, really big audience, because LinkedIn like to push those, they're easy for people to subscribe to, and they don't get blocked by spam filters. So I would also look at that. If you think you're more of the written way, then I would look at newsletters, but you need to be consistent with them. And many people often get very disheartened because they don't see immediate success and big numbers overnight.
What methods do you use to engage your audience and keeping them coming back to ETL? Like, are there any particular engagement strategy that you could share with us regarding, content creation?
Yeah, so a big play for us with audience is very much how we run the publication is we look at volume of information and specific content to resonate with small groups of people. We produce the content at Event Tech Live in that very same matter. So across the 2 days, we've got two shows co-located at the same time, but across those two shows, there are 7 stages of content running sessions concurrently all through the day. On top of that, we supplement that with roundtable discussions. So those are more small and more intimate formats around a particular topic, more Chatham House. And people can actually get involved as an attendee in that conversation rather than it just be participatory. And then we also now have a workshop area, which is a new introduction this year, where we hope to deliver more formal education and training around certain topics and subject matters with the long-term view of people actually being able to come to Event Tech Live and actually do a short qualification in maybe Expo FP or something like that, and get some kind of accreditation from you as a company that they can then use going forward to show that that's something that they've participated in. So content is a big play for us to keep people coming back, and we do that by refreshing the content, keeping it very up to date, keeping it on trend, but also bringing in lots of the users and buyers of technology to share their experiences and their strategies and their challenges and things like that. So they're going to hear from other industry professionals that look and sound and feel like them. So they're going to hear those case studies. And then ultimately, one of the biggest things that keeps the event interesting is finding opportunities to bring new, fresh companies and new technologies into the market. Mm-hmm. So we do that through a number of different reasons. We are always on the lookout for companies that are just launching into the market. And we actually have what we call the Launchpad program. So it's a program for startups to be able to be at the show, have a presence on the show floor, and actually pitch live as part of the event to a set of judges and a live audience so they can share what they're doing. That's really interesting because not only does it show kind of new companies coming in with new technologies, but it also showcases new companies coming in to markets where technology already exists, but maybe think about it and approaching it in a totally different manner. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really interesting because often companies not necessarily so happy with their current supply chain, they may be having problems or challenges, and they're looking for a new company. We won't have this company here this year because they're still in beta, but there's a really exciting company coming into the event app space. And event apps have been around for a decade, right, or more. Like, there's nothing new about event apps. But actually, if you look at event apps on the whole, they all work and feel and look, and you engage with them all very much in the same way. Yeah. This company is building their event app foundationally with AI from the ground up. And you don't access that event app in the same way. It is very much your first experience is a prompt box, and you can talk to that event app. And from the very beginning, it starts to personalize the information and make recommendations based on the conversation you are having with it. So, Matt, your agenda might be specifically to come to the event just to network with a certain caliber of people, and that's what you want, and it presents that to you. Irina, yours might be to look at the education, and all you want to do is look at the education. So rather than you having to go through that event app and try and find that information and find the way to connect up and and then almost think to yourself, well, what's next? That app now brings that information to you. So the Startup and Launchpad is really good for that, like existing technology, but a totally new approach. We also have a similar program at the event for companies who we've all come and loved to hear, like Rain Focus and others, these big companies that have been in the market for such a long time. Mm-hmm. And actually, often they have new products and new suites of technology and new things to share and talk about. But actually, one of the challenges I think in the event tech space is companies are often overlooked or not engaged with because somebody's spoken to that company in the past and they were like, oh, they weren't right for us at the right time. I mean, I'm sure Expo FP itself is a totally different platform and all these new features than it was like 24 months ago, right? Like you're
Yeah.
always developing, always moving forward.
Yeah.
So we've got a program to try and highlight those companies who are existing companies bringing new things to the market. But yeah, it's just trying to find new companies or companies that are doing new and innovative things and share that at the event that keeps it fresh and interesting. I think there's just a genuine interest from the industry on seeing what's new and seeing how people are progressing from an event tech perspective.
But how do you determine like I feel that this company is doing something great? Because you have your personal opinion, you have your experience in the field, of course, but is there anything more about it when you feel
Yeah.
like,
Yeah, I think there's there's two very telling kind of things that are always things that I look for quite early on. One of those things, and I always find this way more interesting, is if a founder or a company starts off a conversation with me and it starts with, through our experience in X, Y, and Z, like through our experience of attending events, through our experience of organizing events, through our experience of being an exhibitor at an event, we had this challenge, we had this problem. That for me is foundational. If somebody's coming and launching a product based on their own experience and their own frustration and an objection or a challenge that they faced, that's always really interesting because if they face that challenge, how many other people are in there are very much similar to them are also facing that challenge? That's real world. What sometimes really strikes me though is companies will launch a product going, yeah, we've got this thing and it's like a blockchain and it's going to revolutionize the ticketing industry. And I'm like, but is it really going to, like, on what basis? Like, the ticketing industry is not broken.
Yeah.
Like, you might think it could be done better, and that might be absolutely the case. Are you going to take Ticketmaster on? Like, are they just going to deploy blockchain technology? So anybody who's the technology is not coming from experience. Let's say they've seen AI and they've been to an event and they've gone all of a sudden, oh, I'm going to create something for the events industry because that's going to be a super easy business to scale. Like without any experience, that's the stuff that doesn't really kind of like float and fly. And I think just going back to that earlier point, it's they've looked at an existing process and they've realized that with modern language and modern technology and modern coding and modern platforms and things like that, they can do that better, right? And we see that across every industry. I mean, we can take businesses like, I don't know whether this is right, but like Five Guys don't really do anything different to McDonald's, right?
Yeah.
But they still manage to launch and have a successful business because they just approach the business in a different way. And they approached it knowing that there's a certain subset of customers that want a premium experience and are quite happy to pay $20+ for a burger and fries. And there are those customers that want to spend $5 and go to McDonald's, and that's absolutely fine. So that's interesting where they're going, right, we know that this market is already got X, Y, and X players, but we think we do things better in this, and this is how we're approaching it. And that's really interesting. There is one company that we're working with at Event Tech Live this year that's really interesting to me. They are leveraging AI. It's a company called Voxo. And what they're doing is they're taking live audio feeds from our stages, running that through AI, and immediately creating highlights from speakers and quotes and generating all of that stuff for the attendees. So literally the attendee can scan a QR code in a session and get a highlight of what the session was about. And that they can share to social media if they want to. But what's really interesting to me is that they can share that with their teams if they're not with remotely, if they're not even at the event. Now, most organizations cannot afford to send their entire company to an event, right? So they often choose like one or two people. But getting that information effectively back into the hands of the team is really challenging. One, because if I'm honest, as communicators, we're not that good at it. Like we're not good at effectively taking what somebody else said and passing it back. Often Chinese whispers
without changing it.
without changing it. Yeah. We also there's also this interesting dichotomy that's presented to us called the forgetting curve. The forgetting curve basically means that within 4 to 5 days of being at an event and watching a session, you've lost 80% of that information. You cannot retain it, right? Now, events are even worse than that, actually, because you take travel and flights and, jet lag and catching up on work and maybe some drinks and things like that and a party in between. And then the week after, like, it's even harder to relay that information. So I think Voxo are interestingly coming at it from, well, if we can get really precise, really concise recaps of these sessions with key points into the hands of the attendees that went to those sessions, they can take that away with them. They can share it with their teams. They can showcase the value of their attendance to that event, which will make it a much easier decision to send those people and reinvest in those events going forward. That's one of the actual biggest challenges of any event organizer, is getting everybody that attended this year to come back the following year. And often that's because people walk away and go, I like the event, I feel good about the event, but I don't know what it meant for my business.
When you can share the information about the event, even for example on your socials, timely, it's a crucial thing. Nobody cares about this event in a week because there is another event happening. It's also about content for sure. So how have you seen the content in the events industry evolve over the years?
It's never been easier for people to create content. I will say there's a caveat to that I'm certainly seeing, because I get a lot of content submitted to me, both for the event and for the news portal, that already people are overly heavily reliant on AI without doing much fact checking. There's very little personality behind it in terms of the inflection of the actual business or the person, especially with abstract submissions for sessions. We're seeing a lot of people actually create content unwittingly that's very much the same and submitting it because they're kind of clearly asking AI to produce something around the same topic, and it's kind of giving the same information to both parties. And what's really interesting is actually that from somebody who schedules or helps the team schedule speakers and sessions for the event, my role in that is often I go out and I connect with people that I already know and I know have experience, and I bring them in. So they are often more on the organizer, the buyer side of things. I know who they are. I know they've got knowledge. I'll bring them in and we'll curate something with them. But on the other hand, we have a call for applications open and people submit that content. And actually what helped the team before were, when looking at those submissions, there was initial instinct about the depth and clarity of that content and that submission, which could then be used as a barometer to say, this person clearly knows what they're talking about. So there's a good chance that if we put them on stage, they're going to be a confident speaker. They'll be happy to speak about this event, this content in depth. And if they're asked questions, they'll have the answers. Well, actually, now with AI, that's really challenging, because actually it's not so much that somebody is necessarily putting forward a submission where they've got very little or no experience in, which is actually still happening. We definitely know that's happening. Unfortunately, that happened to me in Las Vegas last year. We had on the face of it an amazing submission, and then when it came to the crunch, you could just tell the speaker had actually no background or
no idea. No idea.
Which is really unfortunate, that both for them, because they were a chicken in headlights at the event, the attendees, because it created a poor experience for them, and for us, because it also reflected on us as like, well, you're the one putting these people in place. Surely you've got the checks and balances to make sure that they're good. But it's becoming increasingly challenging. So while there's all of these new tools and ways of creating content, there's some very, very big challenges for event producers and event coordinators to actually get the right speakers to the event. I think we're now going to have to take steps to ask for references and recommendations and context of them speaking at other events, maybe even a short video. And if you're not willing to submit a short video of you actually speaking about this, then that becomes a line in the sand of, as well, if you're not willing to do that, we're not willing to schedule you. And I think, there is a huge value to speaking. In fact, I say it's one of the biggest hacks you can do from a marketing and career development perspective. You know, there's thousands of events out there, lots of producers looking for people to speak on them, host sessions, be panelists, speak solo. And it's a great, great career development tactic because you can ultimately put yourself forward, gain yourself individual visibility. There's a lot of appetite for people to speak, but now this is creating a real dichotomy of like, how do we choose the right people to speak at the event? Um, so there's also, I think, from a content perspective, the strategies that I really like are what you're doing now, right? Like be be the inquisitor, be the person who connects up with really interesting people around subjects, has a conversation with them, and then use that content to produce a number of different formats of content that you can use then in your marketing. This is a webinar, which is happening now. Then you've got the ability to extract like each section and create a small blog post or a social media post or a content clip, things like that. So from like one session of maybe an hour and a half, you have the ability. And that's where AI really comes into play, is now it gives you the tools and the efficiency as a small business to really crank out lots of really good quality content. All you have to focus on is that first bit of having a really good guest speaker and a really good conversation. And then all of the great content comes from it. You don't have to think about trying to churn out like 15 articles a year on, I don't know, AI in the events industry and trying to get all the content out and written content when you can just go and interview people.
Yeah.
So how about the negative feedback? Do you ever received any negative feedback about news you have shared? And also, how do you typically handle such sensitive topics or sensitive players in the event industry?
Yeah. So there's a couple of different areas on this. So from an event news perspective, it is our job to be Switzerland on lots of subjects, right? We take no sides. We report on the news as it happens. We fact check. We ensure that the information that's also sent to us is factual. So that's how we deal with that. But in terms of negative feedback, I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, we're dealing with a global industry and you're not going to please everybody. And everybody's entitled to their own opinion, but it doesn't necessarily mean what we've published or if we've published the opinions of somebody else's, they're not valid. Often, what we do with that when somebody has a difference of opinion on a subject matter, we invite them to have their say. Like, okay, so you see the other side to this, talk to us and let's share your side. Like,
Interesting.
as long as it's not, any of the big no-nos, it's not racist, it's not homophobic, it's not, it's
Yeah.
not deep-rooted politics and all that kind of stuff. Like, you are entitled to your opinion, and we are a platform that are willing to share that. And often people quite quickly retract because you will find that they're quite happy to be verbal and or persuasive to you on a one-to-one basis, but put themselves out there in the public sphere, and it's a totally different kind of kettle of fish. So we always deal with it like that in terms of that, like always open. We often invite people, we encourage people to respond and reply to other content and articles if they have a difference of opinion. Because we have to share both sides, but if we don't see both sides, we can't share that kind of thing. From a content perspective on the events, we often encourage debates. We often like to see both sides of the coin. There's always a reason to use an event app. There's always a reason not to use an event app. Actually, in the event tech space, there's quite a lot of what's the word? Competition anyway. So we get those debates quite often. We get that kind of conversation, that kind of stuff. But listen, at the same time, negative feedback often sometimes comes from a place of validity. And I'm not sitting here and say that we get everything right or we please everybody. I've been dealing with an email today with somebody who was quite unhappy with their attendance to an event, but that was 1 in 2,000 people. So you have to take that into account as well. Like that was the experience of one person, which is unfortunate, and we can still strive to do better. But their negative feedback ultimately is not the feedback of the other 1,999. So
You dedicated the whole event to the event technology. Today, what's the event technology you cannot imagine good trade show without?
If I
What
said
kind of
floor plan, would
technology? First,
that...
yeah, okay, thank you so much. It was very pleasure to have you. It was a pleasure to have you. Yeah, but but honestly, just share your opinion.
I think rather than talk about um the specific technologies, let's talk about the experience of people engaging with an event.
Mhm.
For me, to not have clear navigation around large events is a real big no-no. People are short on time. People need to make efficiency. People need to be able to find themselves around the event and find each other as well, right? We often think about the only experience is a visitor finding an exhibitor, and that's not the case. Often visitors are trying to find each other within the venue. They are at different ends of the hall, and they're trying to find a place to meet and things like that. So for any show out there that doesn't have a navigation tool in the event app, on the event website, displaying the information, if they can have wayfinding in it, even better, blue dot, things like that, even better, because we want to maximize our time at the show. And if we're lost, that is the experience that we become to. We've got to remember that people go away from our events with an experience, and that can either be really, really positive or really, really negative. Nobody likes getting lost. Nobody likes having a hard time finding their friends. So for me, that is really, really crucial, having good navigation and extending that navigation outside of the hall as well, to the venue, to maybe even the local vicinity and things like that.
Mhm.
I think also, you know, events that don't roll out lead capture technology ubiquitously across their exhibitors boggles my mind. That really does boggle my mind. Ultimately, those companies are there to generate leads. If then you don't outfit them with the thing that helps them capture those leads, you are actually having them have a worse experience. Therefore, it is going to be harder to convince them to come back to the show. You are also missing out on how many people they actually had conversations with and who they were as a show organizer. It blows my mind that companies still go, no, if you want the lead capture, you've got to buy it. Like, okay, if a company wants like 15 lead captures, 20 lead captures, okay, there's a cost, right? We understand that. Like, those things don't come for free. But to not have every exhibitor outfitted with a minimum of one lead capture app or license or whatever it is, it blows my mind. It really does. I think they're crazy, to be honest with you. And I think the other thing really now is organizations that don't capture that education, that content. Yes, we don't have to live stream it. Live streaming it can be very, very costly,
Yeah.
especially with, like, I pay more for my Wi-Fi at Excel than I did for my first venue for my event, right? It's like, it's crazy. So yeah, I get people don't necessarily want to stream things, but to point cameras at the stages which are already capturing the audio and capture that content, if you're not capturing every piece of content and every session at your event, I think you're massively missing out. That is part of the attendee experience. We can't expect attendees to go to be able to attend every session that they want to, but we can provide that session. There's value there from those companies that are speaking on those, from exhibitors to sponsors to other industry professionals that are supporting the show. I think that's to not see that type of technology, and there's nothing revolutionary about it, but to not see that invested in to capture all that and to get that value, again, seems absolutely bonkers to me. I go to hundreds of events every year, lots of places in Europe, lots of places in the USA and stuff like that. And often I'm there for a short period of time. I'm not there for a week. I'm there maybe even for just a few days. And when I am at those destinations, I really like to explore those locations. I really like to explore those cities and try and see the place that I'm in. So I often will purposefully choose a hotel that's further away from the venue I need to be, so I've got a walk to
Oh,
get
that's interesting,
to the
isn't
venue.
it?
Yeah.
Because it's a great way to get your exercise in, get your steps in, get some fresh air, take some phone calls and speak and do some work while you're moving. and not literally be in the hotel where the venue is and go from your hotel room straight into the event and stuff like that. For me, it's actually a great way to decompress from the event as I'm walking out of the event to have a destination that I'm walking back to. And I've always really struggled with like Google Maps, and it's like just shows you from point A to point B, right? It doesn't really show you. You can zoom in on like certain like points of interest and stuff. I came across a platform called WalkSmart.ai. So you can create your own tour in any city or any location anywhere in the world. You give it the details of your starting location, which can be your hotel or just where you're stood at that point. And then you can customize it and it's dialogue. So you can say, I want to be walking for the next 2 hours. I want to start and finish in the same location. And I'm really interested in culture, art, architecture, food, things like this, right? You Instagrammable spots. And it will generate you a custom tour from your location, and you will be able to walk through that tour physically through the city and see all those spots that you might have unwittingly missed. So that for me is something that now, like, as an organizer, for those individuals that are coming to my show that maybe not from London or from the UK, I can now send some communication with them to say, hey, listen, this might be your first time in London. If you've got time, maybe you want to explore London a little bit. Here's a tool that you can use that totally free. Go and explore London in and around Event Tech Live. That's value add to me because now they're getting the opportunity to go, oh, yeah, let's go and explore London rather than just sit in the hotel and then go back to the airport and things like that. And if they have a good time in London, that's a good memory of them coming to our event. So I think that amplifies that as well. And I think that's something that every attendee could use if they wanted to.
You not only had valuable connections, but you also just spent good time doing what you like to do, museums, art, whatever. So yeah, it makes
For me,
perfect
this
sense.
is something as an organizer. We see like IMEX do it, don't they? They do the IMEX run. Like, I'm not a runner. I can't run. I don't like to
Mhm.
run. But I'd like to walk with a group of event professionals and see some things and have a conversation along the way, and that be part of my networking experience. Like, so I think like organizers could also like use this as a way to curate the experience of matchmaking and networking for people around topics or just like first timers or things like that in a really interesting way. So it feels to me like the old school of like, you'd go to a destination and you join a bus tour or something like that, wouldn't you? And you kind of go around and stuff like that. But like a show organizer could use this to like help curate those walks and those networking opportunities and that connection between people around the event.
Thank you so much, Adam. It was really a pleasure to talk to you. Like, really, I feel the passion about what you are doing. It's amazing to work with people who are passionate about their work. So, again, thank you so much. I hope to stay in touch.
Thank you very much for having me on. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.